I'm delighted to welcome all of and each of you tonight to this event. My name is Eda Molla Hussein. I am the Religions for Peace UK Interfaith Youth Network Coordinator. And I'm delighted of seeing all of you tonight here. I would like to let you know again that this event is being recorded. Please stay with your cameras off if you don't consent us. And please select the speaker's view from the right top of corner of your screen. I welcome each and every one of you, again, representatives from the United Nations, distinguished guests, and youth leaders of faith who are now connected from different parts of the world. I would like to thank all of you again for attending our event tonight. And we hope to have an interesting and informative intergenerational dialogue this evening. Also, I wish to give a warm welcome to our chair of the Board of Trustees of Religions for Peace UK, Jamie Creswell, who just joined us. Thank you so much giving me the opportunity to run this event tonight. I will start my presentation, also share our details of the Interfaith Youth Network here. If you would like to find out more about what My Faith and Environment is, please do email to youth.coordinator@rfpuk.org or follow us on social media. On YouTube channel, you will find the part 1 and part 2 of My Faith and Environment. Religions for Peace stands for different faiths for common action, and we do aim to find solutions and take actions regarding world's environmental problems, but also in general the problems that the world is facing nowadays. Tonight we will discuss the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is called COP26. I'm pretty sure you've seen it many times for the last month, and it was the first major United Nations summit which happened in Glasgow, UK last month. It is important that people of interfaith, the leaders of interfaith and non, to come together to help for the future environmental security. This is going to be the major concern for now and the future. And tonight's event is the start of an intergenerational conversation for what we can do together and initiate action together. Tonight's event agenda is put together with 3 parts. So first part is dedicated to a panel discussion, and the second part is the breakout rooms, and the last part is the question and answer and the discussion areas. Ravinder Karnijar, she is the chair of Religions for Peace UK Women of Faith Network, advisor at SIX in Scotland. She is also SIX representative of Scottish Religious Leaders Forum International Women's Coordinating Committee member, and also Religions for Peace Global Women of Faith Network and board member of European Women of Faith Network. And she will be presenting to us COP26 and how we can work together.
Warm greetings, everyone. It's an honor to speak to you today on my reflections of COP26. Now, this is the first time that I have ever attended a UN climate change conference, and I am fortunate enough to live in Glasgow and was able to attend through my work for Religions for Peace. COP26, as you know, is the United Nations 26th Climate Change Conference, and a lot of people don't know what COP stands for. And COP stands for Conference of Parties. That's all the different delegations and the governments who come from around the world. COP is understood as the most important COP meeting in a long time. Now, the reason why, it's because COP26 took place after the conclusion of the first 5-year cycle, which was outlined in the Paris Accord in 2015, where countries signed up for the first time to submit progress reports on the so-called nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs, that they committed to, and more importantly, to the ambitions for the next cycle ahead. So that means in COP26, they were supposed to let us know how they had fared and what progress that they had made. But luckily at this COP, instead of doing it every 5 years, they're going to give us a yearly progress report. Now, we in Glasgow, all the faith communities and religious leaders had been working for a good few months, well before COP started. And in fact, COP started for us on the Friday when the first pilgrims arrived in Glasgow from around the world. And some had started in August, and they came from Germany, Holland, Poland, Sweden, and the UK, and from around Scotland as well. And the Sikh community, in true interfaith fashion, they welcomed all the pilgrims from different parts of the world. And we shared langar with them, which is a free community meal given at any Gurdwara, the Sikh place of worship around the world. And before things got going at COP26, Interfaith Scotland, Interfaith Glasgow, and the faith communities, we held a prayer vigil in the main square in Glasgow, and senior religious leaders read the Glasgow Multi-Faith Declaration that they had been working on for quite a few months beforehand. And 50 religious leaders from Scotland and the UK signed the Glasgow Multi-Faith Declaration, which calls for those in power to put the 2015 Paris Agreement into effect. And these are some of the pictures from the prayer vigil, and it was very well attended by people of faith and none, and the public from in and around Glasgow and from around the world as well. After the event, we all gathered at Garnet Hill Synagogue, where the UNFCCC Interfaith Liaison Committee had organized a Talanoa dialogue. And we had an interfaith service there, but also the opportunity during the dialogue to share experiences and to look at how we can support each other in the continued efforts to mitigate the climate crisis. And over 200 people attended the event, which was online and also on site as well. So at last, at COP26, it was very, very exciting to go through the security and into the myriad of buildings, and expectations were high of all the delegates. Things needed to change so that humanity could survive on planet Earth. Thousands of people came together, world leaders, scientists, politicians, delegations from different countries, people of faith, indigenous people, all having a common goal to stop global temperatures rising and to protect the planet. And here we are in the main venue, and it started off with David Attenborough and Prince Charles speaking. And these are just a few of the photographs taken at the main venue. The World Leaders Summit, well, it started off well. We had a pledge right from the beginning from 130 countries to end deforestation by 2030. But the crucial part of eradicating the use of fossil fuels was not achieved. They said that they would use less fossil fuels, but not to get rid of them completely. But the Barbados Prime Minister, she spoke out for the islands that are facing catastrophe. She said, and I found this very, very powerful, how can 1/3 of the world not do anything when 2/3 of the world is facing catastrophe? Now, I found that there was the hydro was the action hub. If any of you know Glasgow, it's a great big round building there. And, with this planet Earth high above the arena, it was a hive of activity where people connected, networked, and could have their voice heard globally through the media that lined the perimeter of the hub. I had the opportunity on the 3rd of November to speak at an event organized by Religions for Peace International, Making Peace with Nature, Heeding the Call of Indigenous People. And I heard the plight of Indigenous people and of the continued support by the Norway government for the Interfaith Forest Initiative, and the other speakers from the Anglican Church and other churches from around the world of what we should all be doing to help the climate crisis. I spoke on the impact of climate change on women and was honored to publicize for the first time in the history of UN climate change conferences a statement by women of faith globally to denounce the destruction of the environment, and also that it impacts women and the poor most. The statement was produced by Religions for Peace International Women's Coordinating Committee, which comprises of women of faith networks representing many regions and faith traditions in over 90 countries. I was also personally able to hand the statement, Women of Faith statement, to Prince Charles, and I asked him to hand it to the Queen, who is also a woman of faith. So it was my job to try and get the statement out as widely as possible, and I was able to hand it to the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and in an interview on Sky News on Gender Day, I was able to publicize it more through Sky. But, you know, what I found was that there shouldn't be a need for a day to be dedicated to gender or youth, as the needs of youth and women should permeate every policy and decision made by those in power. So we have to make sure that we educate the young right from the beginning, who are going to be leaders of future generations, that they need to consider the needs of everyone, including women and youth. Now, what I found really inspiring about COP26 was the ability to network and to find solutions with other organizations throughout the world. For example, it was really heartening to see that businesses, governments, and scientists, they were all working together to find solutions that can help the climate crisis. I was able to work with the Abibiman Foundation from Ghana, and we are able to take forward the Sacred Forest Initiative in Ghana. And that is an initiative which actually sort of is able to have forest growth within 2 years and not within the 10 years span that we have normally when we plant trees. So now the question is how quickly can meaningful action be taken to protect the planet and in turn the whole of humanity before it is too late for islands like Tuvalu that are sinking now. So we all need to come together now afterwards to see how we can stop this, because your voice, our voice, all of our voices need to keep on advocating, keep on speaking to governments to ask them, how far have you got? What progress have you made? And it's the people who are going to be the change, who are going to help this climate crisis. And you are the ones to do it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Uniman, and today I want to talk to you about something that you most likely haven't heard before and might even disagree with initially. But hear me out, and hopefully I can help balance your views. The topic I'm going to discuss today is what consumption looks like in a sustainable world. But before I do, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Matt. I'm a keen environmentalist, and I've spent the last few years working in the sustainability sector, ranging from working at Veolia to help citizens understand recycling better, to driving the waste and recycling agenda for Costa Coffee, and to my most current position as a food waste consultant. My journey into sustainability started during my time at university, where I noticed a large amount of food waste being generated in the dining facilities. I ended up working with my university to land an initiative aimed at redistributing food surplus, saving over 700 meals from going to waste in a few months. Since then, I've worked on and been exposed to a wide range of sustainability issues, trying to form as balanced a view as possible about what sustainability means to me. I'm also a liberal Jew who attended an Orthodox Jewish school. As you can imagine, this caused me to have to learn about a totally different point of view to my own, redefine to myself what my beliefs and understanding of the world were, as well as learn how to challenge the status quo in a productive manner. Well, I'm sure my teachers wouldn't have called it a productive manner, but over the last few years, I've been able to use this ability to question the business as usual activity in order to drive sustainable change. This experience of being a liberal Jew in an Orthodox Jewish school taught me the following. 1, be open to others' opinions and truly try to understand where they're coming from. 2, challenge others' opinions in a constructive manner. And 3, be willing to redefine your beliefs and understanding as new views and information is presented to you. Over the last few months, coinciding with COP26, I've been challenging my own beliefs when it comes to sustainability. This started after I received a package of sustainable toilet paper, each individually wrapped in recycled paper. My mum was confused about why they needed this unnecessary packaging. However, it got me thinking about the importance of consumption in the transition to a sustainable world. Now, we've all heard of the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, with reduce being the first and most important action of the 3. For years, I preached an absolute reduction, but now I'm advocating for a different type of reduction. Before I explain my point, I want to provide some context. Now, the world is getting much better at recovering items for recycling and actually recycling them. Let's take paper as our example. A consumer has purchased paper and put it into the recycling bin. This bin is emptied, sorted, and the paper is recycled into a new paper product. Now, let's say that we had an absolute reduction in paper use, where there'd be no place for this recycled paper to go. And with no one purchasing the recycled paper, there'd be no money to fund the entire recycling infrastructure. And let's imagine that from tomorrow, we create no more virgin paper products and instead just use recycled paper. Well, we'd need to actually increase our consumption of recycled products in order to recycle all of the paper currently available. What I'm trying to show here is that reduction is not the silver bullet, but rather an informed reduction of non-recycled products and an increase in the consumption of recycled and recyclable products is what is needed to transition to a sustainable future. Only through working with amazing companies, learning more about innovations, and listening to all sides of the debate have I been able to reform my opinion on something that guided my life for years. That's why, in light of COP26, it's important to take a step back and try to approach it from a more balanced point of view. Yes, the majority of people feel like more could and should have been accomplished at COP26, with myself leaning towards this view. But we also need to remember that none of us understand the individual needs of the countries who attended, such as healthcare, transport infrastructure, and food security. Before scorning those that made underwhelming commitments, spend time looking into the opportunities and challenges that country faces to better understand their starting position. The same also goes for brands and individuals. If you take just one thing from this talk, please let it be the pursuit of informed consumption to drive the transition to a sustainable world. Research the brands you're buying from. See what, if any, impact they're generating from their profits. We need to consume more recycled and recyclable products in order to fund the current and future sustainable infrastructure, whilst consuming less products and services that slow down this transition. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I apologize in advance. My internet is a little bit sketchy, so please stop me if it becomes tricky to manage. But I just to briefly to be able to share some of my reflections with you all this evening of attending COP26. So it was my first time attending COP as well. And I attended as a delegate of the Soka Gakkai International, and I participated in the first week of the conference itself. So I was in the Blue Zone, which is kind of where all the official negotiations happen, most of them behind closed doors, unfortunately. But yes, I guess why I participated in COP, I would say the main reason I was at COP26 was really to kind of observe young people's role and their place at the COPs. So my professional background is a youth worker, and I'm an advocate for the youth voice in decision making, particularly on topics which directly impact and shape young people's lives, like climate change. So for anyone who's not familiar with the kind of work stream of youth voice, it's the pursuit to enable young people or empower young people to have a say in decision-making processes and for their inputs to actually be able to influence decision outcomes. So kind of moving beyond this tokenistic representation of just having young people there, but actually how can we meaningfully engage and create spaces and mechanisms and places where young people can actually influence decisions. And I think I heard one youth participant say it really well at COP. They said, we're not asking to replace anyone at the table, we are just asking for a seat at it. So this, I feel, really represents the plight of many young people that were attending COP26. And I think there were some wins for youth participation at COP26. We saw the launch of the Global Youth Statement, which was organised and created by Youngo, who are the official youth constituency in the UN climate framework. And this statement included the voices of over 40,000 global youth. You also saw the presentation of the Youth for Climate Manifesto, which was created at the Youth for Climate Summit, which was a kind of pre-COP26 youth summit, which happened in Milan. And this again contains concrete proposals from youth. And this was handed to the Italian Minister of the Ecological Transition, Robert Cingolani, and also the COP UK President, Alok Sharma. And they promised to advocate this manifesto among the member state delegations. And kind of after this happened, the Italian government also announced that they would be funding the Youth for Climate Summit forever, they said. So that was really nice to hear. But there are some ways to go before young people are truly recognized as equal partners. So until youth voice is formally integrated in decision making and policy outcomes, there's still a big gap that needs to be addressed. But I also saw that there were kind of many inequalities that exist between young people themselves, and these come out very starkly. Kind of global inequalities come out very, very clearly when you bring youth participation to a global level. So youth participation is pretty common in this country, but it's not a common practice in many countries across the world. And many young people don't have the platforms or the invitations to get involved in decision making. And so they miss out on like training and development opportunities, which are crucial for helping young people to make the most of opportunities that do come up. And also I was speaking to many youth from developing nations who said it's actually quite unsafe for many young people to share their stories and experiences or the realities of what life is like in their countries, as it can make them a target in their countries. So I learned that we really need to be mindful when we're asking young people from other countries to talk on a platform and share their stories, just to make sure that, they're safe. One young person from Kenya, he was explaining that to take part in a climate strike, for example, like the popular Fridays for Futures that we see in this country, it means risking potential arrest and even being put in a cell with adults. So yeah, just getting kind of consent from young people that actually it's fine for them to share their stories. But kind of beyond youth participation, I learned many things from attending COP. Firstly, and very quickly, just the need to strengthen people's solidarity and consolidating a people's movement for climate action and climate justice at the grassroots. So we can't just wait for direction from the top. There's a need for people to take responsibility kind of at the grassroots. Secondly, that climate action must adopt a human rights-based approach to avoid atrocities against indigenous communities and those with less decision-making power. So, for example, in conservation efforts, they need to be based on the guiding principles of human rights. There are many conservation efforts that actually evict indigenous peoples off their land in the name of conservation. And this is a huge problem that's happening in many parts of the world, and it's largely going unreported. So having a kind of human rights-based approach to all climate action is necessary, and it also will hopefully protect humans and rights to their land, for example. Just two more points very quickly. I think it's really important that we see indigenous communities and young people acknowledged not as victims but leaders of climate action, and we need to listen more and talk less to them. When I say we, kind of us from Western developed countries. And lastly, just to say that I saw real importance and significance for faith groups having a really unique role to play in the conferences. Traditionally in the traditions of communication and, for example, like the Talanoa dialogue, these kind of attempts to transform how negotiations at COP take place and creating space for more reflection, dialogue and discussion. I'm sure I've overrun, but sorry. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you all this evening. So as Edda said, I'm Aisling. I work for Pax Christi, England and Wales, and we're a Catholic peace movement. And so with that, we're also part of the Catholic Youth Ministry Federation, which kind of brings together people with working with young people in all kinds of different in faith environments, just to share what we do really and support each other. So during COP26, I was lucky enough to go up to Glasgow with a small group, and we were originally formed by the Columban Missionary Society, but they brought together lots of different groups, including kind of the Jesuits, Laudato Si movement, Justice and Peace Scotland, Skiaf, CAFOD. There's a whole list on the website. I'm not going to go through it because that would be my 5 minutes up there and then. But we all kind of came together to create what we classed or called an online vigil. And the idea was really, how do we bring voices that we've heard maybe through our work or through encounter with people who are most affected by climate change, or people who are kind of in other parts of the world that won't be able to get to Glasgow to share their stories. And really recognising that as people of faith, we were called to kind of campaign for climate justice, and that actually it was important also just to pray for its success. You know, we want it to do well, and so it's kind of maybe a good idea for us to bring that together mindfully in a kind of faith perspective. So a group of us kind of went off up to Glasgow, and from 11 a.m. on Friday the 5th to 11 a.m. on Saturday the 6th, we broadcast 24 hours of kind of stories, of videos, of action, of prayer, all about climate change, and kind of all directed at kind of COP26. So there were kind of videos from groups, there was, I think, South Korea, the Philippines, Malawi, Sudan, kind of Chile, Mexico, Peru, as well as from England and from Scotland, all kind of reflecting on climate justice. So there was everything from prayer and reflection, there was stories, there was interviews, but there was also kind of dance and song and things that are much more kind of celebratory to kind of recognise the beauty of creation. And we also kind of, that was stuff that we could prepare beforehand, that we could slot into a 24-hour time frame. But then we also had segments that were kind of live from Glasgow. So that would be us in Glasgow, maybe praying, there might be singing, sharing stories that people had sent to us, or then kind of it ended as well with a mass. So it was a way that people could kind of almost be there with us in a way. And a really other important element of this vigil was that on the website, we invited people to kind of write in and to share their stories of climate change. And we then gathered these stories together and we sent them to the UN climate negotiators so that these voices of people around the world could be brought to the table at the negotiations themselves. So we had 50 stories shared, and on YouTube, I think we discovered that we'd had about 2,000 people viewing, but some of them were groups as well. So it seems like almost over 2,000 people joined us from across the world, from kind of the US, Mexico, South Korea, India, Peru, all over. And it was actually something really powerful that kind of, there was just a couple of us huddled in a room somewhere in Glasgow. We're actually able to connect with people across the globe and kind of come together in prayer, but also to come together to learn and to listen to one another's experiences and to all participate in COP26 in some way. And then after kind of our vigil was ended, those of us who were there kind of went out and we joined the rally through the streets of Glasgow, trying to kind of really be mindful of those voices that we'd heard over that past 24 hours. And unfortunately, the outcome wasn't all that we dreamed of, particularly, some of the people that we were hearing from over those 24 hours, kind of how, whether it addresses their issues, maybe not, but actually it showed us that there was something really powerful in being able to bring these voices together, and that actually people really appreciated knowing that somehow their voice had made it. And although we weren't kind of in the negotiations themselves, we were very much outside. We were joined by so many other kind of faith groups and groups from civil society, and it was quite an energizing environment, outside and kind of in the streets of people sharing their stories and their experiences. But I think as people of faith, we have a particularly unique kind of platform to be able to bring these voices together, to kind of give a voice to people that wouldn't normally be able to come to these places and being able to come to these tables, and to really kind of support each other in sharing that voice and sharing those stories. And hopefully those stories and those voices will be able to get to people who kind of have the power to make that change. But actually, there's something really powerful in just hearing those stories and learning from one another, because I think that is something that really can challenge us and can be something that impels us to kind of act and to campaign for climate justice and hopefully a more safer world. I think I'm going to leave it there, but thank you so much. It's been really a privilege to share our COP26 story with all of you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to be with all of you. And I have to say, I'm so proud of all my steering committee colleagues, because it's so lovely to hear you speak and share. And, it really, brings through your dedication and your commitment and all the work that goes on behind all these events, because it's not just a one-off event. There's a lot of time and energy that is necessary to organize all these things. And I also had the honor to meet Ravinda at the vigil that she shared about at the COP26 in Glasgow, which was a very powerful event, beautiful event that brought together different religions in prayer and meditation. And it really demonstrated to me that, sometimes religion can seem like there is a lot of separation, but we all have this common interest and common goal in living in a healthy world. And it was really beautiful to see how this unity and harmony was displayed at the vigil. I would like to share with you tonight my experience from the COY 16, which is the Conference of Youth, which takes place the week before the COP, which I attended. It was the first time for me, and I just attended one day of COP events as well. But just to share from the Conference of Youth, which I think is very special, and it was really an honor to be there and to meet so many other young people who are really dedicated to help bring about a better world to live in. And I was really impressed by their education, by their eloquence, by the way that they carried themselves, presented themselves and their concerns, and the atmosphere that was created during the COI. There were many sessions also on how to upgrade our skills, how to improve networking. And of course, many organizations presented their research, their findings, their challenges in their countries. And it was really interesting and inspiring to see their work in their countries. And again, all the work that has to go into these events, the planning throughout the whole year. So I think the main thing that stood out for me, comparing the COI and the COP, the energy for me was very different. I would say there is a lot of honesty in the COI, and the young people who came there, they really made a big effort on being there and had a lot of renunciation, regarding their lifestyle during the year probably, and, organizing their journeys and their accommodations and their food and all of that, because nothing is paid for the COI. If you're a delegate, at the COP it's different. But the youth has to fund everything themselves. So I was really impressed by their commitment and dedication. And I think the main takeaway for me was, it's really not time anymore to point the finger at others towards what is needed and to wait for governments to make decisions. But we really, each one of us, need to contribute to sustainability. And that's what I mean with behavior change. And I think through our faith, we are in a much better position to be able to bring about behavior change and also to contribute to help others bring about behavior change, because I feel that consumerism is mostly derived from inner emptiness, and through our faith and through our religion belief, we have an inner richness of our inner world, and we can live from that and help others to live a more fulfilled life as well. So thank you very much for listening, and looking forward to our discussion.
Onde Silva. He is a university mentor and Buddhist chaplain, also former senior official of the United Nations Environment Programme, and he will be sharing with us his topic, the relevance of the Glasgow Climate Pact to the world of interfaith. Don, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have, as a result of listening to all the presentations, I think I have titled this presentation Generations Together, because this is what has been demonstrated so far. I think the RfP Youth Interfaith Network should be commended for this unifying initiative. Climate does not discriminate between young and old, rich or poor, caste, race or creed. Climate politics can be divisive and at times destructive. But the RfP UK Youth Network is forging a unifying effort. So this is a seminal event, I feel, for climate action, constructive rather than destructive. A brief history, because I was involved with the climate initiatives right from the beginning. The first climate expert group meeting was organized by UNEP in 1973. Then in 1992, the UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio decided to establish the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change. So COP emanates from there. That's the UNFCCC. So if you want to get the real information from COP, please go to the UNFCCC website, which is linked below. UNFCCC was established as a secretariat headquartered in Bonn, and on 21st March, world governments established an international environment treaty to combat dangerous human interference with the climate system. So COP stands for the Conference of Parties, which meets every year, and it's the decision-making body for the convention. Now, in 2015, 196 governments adopted the Paris Agreement, which was a watershed. It was a legally binding international treaty on climate change and entered into force in 2016. So COP26 could not be held last year because of COVID, and hence the reason for doing it this year. Because as the case with the Paris Agreement, governments report every 5 years. Glasgow, some of the key outcomes from Glasgow. At the Glasgow summit, the historical impact of industrialization was acknowledged, particularly by Western nations. And you can see from this chart that is based on UN statistics, the progress in terms of how humans have influenced and warmed the climate. From industrialization, hand in hand with concepts like unbridled economic growth. And so COP26 highlighted that climate action is inextricably linked to environment, economics, and justice issues. I think this is really quite important. Climate action is not just about conservation, planting a tree, or simply just looking after nature. It is inextricably interlinked. And the Glasgow Climate Pact, which was adopted by the countries, approved and acknowledged that parties should, when taking action to address climate change, respect, promote, consider their respective obligations on human rights, the right to health, the right of indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, and people in vulnerable situations, and the right to development, as well as gender equality, empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity, just like what you're demonstrating now. So it is a coherent, inclusive process from this particular decision that was taking place. Of course, COP26, the Global Climate Pact, was a landmark agreement. According to Global Witness, there were 503 fossil fuel lobbyists affiliated to the world's biggest oil and gas giants who attended the conference. But despite this really strong and overwhelming presence, it is quite unique to see that the Glasgow Climate Pact is the first ever climate deal to call for a phase down of coal, to call for a phasing down of coal. Yes, the At the last moment, the phasing out of coal language went really pear-shaped, but phasing down of coal remained. I'm not going to go through all of the different important sections in the agreement, but I want to point out to you also is the section on international cooperation. In my experience, bringing treaties together and past global environmental summits is that despite all the hostilities that are going on outside, it is quite interesting to see that in a moment of rare cooperation, US and China issued a joint statement saying that they would work together to combat climate change. And as someone who has been engaged in environmental diplomacy, I see this happening all the time. So also moving on to other clear, concrete recommendations that took place concerning jobs. This is an interesting point that was made by President Obama in his address to COP26. In the US, 3 million people work now in clean energy related jobs. That's more than the number of people employed in the entire fossil fuel industry. This is a remarkable achievement. So in the case of COP, I wish to say that I prefer dialogue. I prefer blah, blah, blah to war, war, war. What are the critical challenges that we face, both the young and the old? Reducing climate change for what? Today, the number of people living in extreme poverty is expected to rise to 750 million people by the end of this year. Extreme poverty is measured as the number of people living on less than $1.90 per day. But at the same time, according to the Forbes 2021 list of billionaires, there are 2,755 billionaires worldwide. That's 660 people higher than the 2020 number. So the critical element to realize is that the causes of poverty are the greatest threat to the world's environment. What is at stake? Other economic activities for the future generations, for you now and the generations to come, are based on unsustainable and profligate ways of using natural resources, on which our own existence and future generations depend. And at the moment, the unfortunate thing is that there are no discussions about alternative to current ways of creating health. David Ramsey in Total Money Makeover said something like this: we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And Wendell Berry, this remarkable philosopher, said that unlimited economic growth can be accomplished within limited space with limited materials and limited intelligence only shows unlimited courage and self-confidence of these great minds. That unlimited growth implies unlimited consumption, which in turn implies unlimited pride, covetousness, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth, and only makes the prospect even more unlimited. But despite the problems, when I go around in the world, the interesting thing is that there are environmental solutions that are also coming out of governments across the world. This concerns Belize, which is a Caribbean country located in the northeastern coast of Central America. One of the profound statements that were made at COP26 was that by Johnny Bresenio, the Brazilian Prime Minister, who pointed out that Belize is a net carbon sink. Over 60% of our land has forest cover, and more than 40% of which is protected for conservation and biodiversity. Then comes Bhutan, a tiny kingdom landlocked in the eastern Himalayas. Now, what can Bhutan teach the world about climate change? Bhutan has a population of 771,612. Bhutan's ability to be a net carbon sink is partly down to its natural forests. Most people work in agriculture or forestry, which means it emits less than 2.5 million tons of CO2 each year. But then if you take Luxembourg, which is near where we live, for instance, from a regional side of things, for example, with a smaller population of 634,740, emits 4 times as much. And the Bhutanese government has rejected the concept of gross domestic product because it is illogical, and it has come up with an interesting process of economic growth to measure it called gross national happiness. Please check this out and do kindly look into it. There is also Costa Rica, the Republic of Costa Rica in Central America. The interesting thing with Costa Rica is that it is again reforested its depleted forests within about 20 years or so. Today, most of 60% of the land once again is forested. And Costa Rica has a constitution which abolished the army in 1949. And many decades of political stability has enabled it to invest in economic development and in protection of the environment. Other positive actions: 64% of the land in the Republic of Korea is under forest cover. China has succeeded in restoring a formerly degraded area called the Loess Valley, which is near to the total area of France in central China. In India, I think this is one of the most interesting faith-based initiatives, which is done on a wider scale. Isha Kriya's Project Green Hands, established in 2004, has so far planted 25 million trees, acting in concert with farming communities. So there is faith action. In civic life, faith communities, with all its problems, can also be a force for good. Remember that anti-slavery, the campaign for anti-slavery, was initiated by the Quaker movement, which then led to the abolition of slavery, together with members of parliament like William Wilberforce. When Grenfell burnt, it was the faith organizations who were there to provide support to the suffering. Zakat is a remarkable process where a certain percentage of the earnings are provided by the Muslim communities for community and other good works. Now, the food banks by the Trussell's Trust reaches more than 1 million people every year in the UK. So faith communities can indeed be a force for good. The fact that humankind should live in harmony with nature is found in all faiths. So what is the future for youth action? Remember a couple of things. Those who are older like us have really not been in the sidelines. We have been right in the forefront of this initiatives taking on climate challenges. And it is important to realize that fact. And some of the older scientists, those who have been involved in these initiatives, have also sacrificed and paid sometimes a heavy price for their commitment. The Glasgow Climate Pact has two very specific decisions for young people. Section 64 urges parties and stakeholders to ensure meaningful youth participation and representation in multilateral, national, and local decision-making processes, including under the Convention and the Paris Agreement. Then this is really important for all the young people and all the organizations representing young people here. The Glasgow Climate Pact invites future presidencies of the Conference of Parties, with the support of the Secretariat, to facilitate the organization of an annual youth-led climate forum for dialogue between parties and youth in collaboration with the UNFCCC Children and Youth Constituency and other youth organizations, with a view to contributing to the implementation of the Glasgow Work Programme on Action for Climate Empowerment. So please mobilize yourselves and get into this process and make your voice heard. The critical thing that I would like to conclude by saying is that each of us, each person of faith, is multinational in the fact that we have communities spread right across the world. Therefore, young and old faith leaders should play a front-line role in mobilizing people to take action against environmental conflicts. Climate action is not just for COP26. What I would like to point out is that it is a pilgrimage for life. Faith and sustainability are two sides of the same coin. Sustainable development demands faith involvement. We will not solve climate change without the buy-in of more than 6 billion people of faith communities, and these 6 billion are more powerful than any multinational process in the world today. How to sustain your commitment? This is critically important. President Obama asked people to stay angry. But President Mandela said resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. So we need to sustain ourselves not through anger, but through a process of compassion and sustained concern and commitment. Then we can move mountains. Thank you.
We will be discussing one topic only, and it is to find out one follow-up action that we can work together on after what we learned from COP26. I would like to invite each of you to raise your hands and share your comments with us for tonight. Also your questions to our speakers. Mr. Thompson, could I receive your comments?
Thank you very much. What a fantastic evening of dialogue. Don, you summed it up so brilliantly. I really don't want to be pouring cold water on things, but since we're amongst friends, can we consider a hard question? What can we do together to help our fellow persons of faith to face the hang-ups and difficulties that they have in taking science seriously and in taking responsibility for our world seriously? I find that too many of my co-religionists think that their faith points to pie in the sky when you die, rather than taking responsibility for the here and now. And a worrying number of people are eschewing the usefulness of science and scientific insight, not least through the COVID pandemic. I'm sitting here sheltering at home because I've now got COVID, but I wasn't going to miss the fun. So it's great to see you. So I hope you receive that as a very constructive question. Thank you.
I would like to turn to my speakers who would like to try to answer this question. Hi, Nicole, please.
Thank you for your question. And what I understand is that one, we can share information as facts, you know, trying not to be emotional about it, but just sharing of facts. And then also through our own lifestyle, I think we have to live the changes that we want to see in others and in the world, and that inspires others as well. And I'm aware that, you know, making changes is more or less challenging for each one of us. So also to acknowledge others for, you know, the little changes that they're starting to make. I think that gives them hope and courage to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Can I also...
Thank you. Can I just respond to that very interesting question?
Sure, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that really interesting question. When I started working with UNEP, and when UNEP was established, I had quite a number of dialogues with faith leaders, some of whom were extremely concerned about the fact that the ecological message of interdependence would run contrary to their scriptures, because they felt that the earth is there for man's dominion. But it is quite interesting that over the past 30 years, this whole process has changed. And you find that His Holiness, the Pope Francis, in 2015 came out with a seminal document called Laudato Si, which talks about the stewardship of people. And also you find that many faith leaders, I personally look at it as a positive progression to see that there are many faith leaders who are now taking these matters seriously. Yes, there is still a bit of a gap between science and faith. At the same time, you find that in the case in the UK, giving one small example of vaccinations, it is quite interesting to see that in different parts of the UK, quite a number of temples have made their spaces available as vaccination centers for communities. That I find a very positive factor, and are running some really interesting awareness programs concerning the need for people to vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don.
Can I add something quickly?
Yes.
And it extends wider to people of religion as well. But I think whenever talking about climate change, sustainability, one, you need to inform people so that they actually understand the wider picture, but two, framing it is very important. And, you know, I'm not saying to change the truth to suit the person that you're speaking to, but if one religion very much prioritizes stewardship of the earth, well, there we go. We've got, you know, stop climate change. If a religion is respect your fellow people, well, you can talk about the negative effects that climate change is having on people. So understanding where they're coming from, giving them the information, and then accurately framing that to make sure that lands and resonates with them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Matt. I would like to continue with the next question now. AJ, did we cover your question, or is it something different?
Hi, thanks. No, it was something related to that, but also slightly different. I've actually just put it into the chat because I'm not sure how much time I would have. But just essentially, sorry, I joined a bit late, but just to highlight the idea of in some religious and faith traditions, there could be some kind of a tension between sort of the purpose of mankind, as some of the previous speakers said, and why we use the earth, and scientific points of view, which is why I think humanist and secular belief systems, where I personally come from as well and represent, they also sort of deserve a space in this discussion. And we can see, for example, like Greta Thunberg's efforts that have come from a secular and a humanist point of view without reference to any specific faith. They also deserve their place. And especially among young people, you look at some of the figures, sort of 50-70% of people under 35 don't have any professed religious faith. They still have beliefs and they still have sort of human feelings, and they want to work with society and care about the world and all the other human attributes, but it just doesn't belong to a particular faith. So I think that we need to be conscious about that as well. And I think engaging in interfaith fora like this will help strengthen people's understanding of religions, and also their understanding of humanism and secular ways of living in the world. And so, sorry I couldn't be part of the conversation earlier on today, but I know that RfP do a lot of work with humanist and secular voices, and I think it's only to our benefit. So looking forward to the rest of your points today as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment, AJ. Please do use the youth coordinator, the email that I keep sharing in the chat. If you would like to further discuss about tonight, I will do my best to connect with you, our speakers. I would like to continue with the next question. Hi, Jihangir. Did we cover your question?
Thank you very much, Eda. My question is very simple. When David Attenborough was asked, what is the one thing that needs to be done and for the major change that is required? And I think he hit the nail on the head when he said, stop wasting. Stop wasting. If we stop wasting, the sustainability comes in, overconsumption comes in. So I think one of the issues that we must seriously consider the promotion of how we educate people to stop wasting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jihangir. I would like to continue now. Sorry for rushing in with Dr. Karishma. Hello, Dr. Karishma.
Thank you, Ada, for this wonderfully positive event, an intergenerational event, and kudos to the organizers and the speakers today. I'm here with my mummy, Jeru, representing the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe. What I'd like to ask the speakers, which I'll put in the chat box now, is how do they view the synergy between science, governance, and the faiths? And I'd also like to highlight how wonderful it has been to hear Don and Ravinderji continue the dialogue that they started at the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe symposium called Towards COP26, for which I'd like to give our president, Mr. Malcolm Dagu, and also Mr. Jahangir Sarosh, my mentor, gratitude and credit. So how do our young and seniors in this intergenerational dialogue view the synergy that we can achieve between these three areas, science, faiths, and governance? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lovely seeing you tonight. With respect, I'd like to take this question to Ravinder, if you'd like to comment on Ravinder, and then I'll ask to my rest of the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question, Krishmaji. Personally, I felt that at COP26, there wasn't, the faith communities and people who were outside of the COP scenario, which was going on inside, their voices weren't being heard. I mean, we had the Global Climate March, where 100,000 people from all over the world, they came to it, but they weren't allowed anywhere near the actual venue where the governmental delegates were and the world leaders were. Regarding the connection between science and religion, those who were actually in the blue zone and the green zone, they were connecting together. I think the networking that happened and the action hub, the realization that people from different parts of the world were finding solutions, and the scientists and the faith communities were connecting together. I think that was very positive. I mean, for example, the example that I gave myself, where the EcoSick organization is connecting with Ghana to take forward the Sacred Forest Initiative. Whether the chance to actually sort of speak with delegations was done at the pavilions, and we were able to communicate with them the issues and the wisdom that faith communities have regarding climate justice. So there have been inroads, but a lot of work still needs to be done.
Thank you, Ravinderji. The other thing that is really important is the commonalities between all the faiths and none. In the light of what Jahangir Sarosh mentioned, that we all seek to develop our choices with responsibility to reduce wastage. As Matt mentioned so importantly, the concept of consumerism versus the concept of being a caregiver. Thank you.
But can I also mention that what I saw at this COP was the coming together of businesses, governments, and organizations to, there was an impetus that, yes, they need to do something together. I mean, businesses also consume a lot and they waste a lot as well. So I think, and also the solutions that were there from different organizations. For example, Prince William did the finalists of the Earthshot Prize were there as well. So I think more needs to be given to the fact of finding solutions and giving those organizations a platform, a much better platform, so that we can share practice and learn from each other.
Thank you so much, Ravinder. Thank you so much for waiting, Dr. Mark. Could I have your question if we haven't covered it already?
My question is, was the faith voice sufficiently or adequately heard at COP26? And I really think that in answering that question from our Christian perspective, I think we need to encourage one another in different faiths by drawing from the faiths important parables or aspects of the faith literature that encourages our participation in the environment. One of the best ones that I found within the Christian perspective is the feeding of the 5,000, the parable that Jesus gives to us, and that event, that miracle, because it first of all talks about looking immediately in front of you to find solutions, because Peter said to Philip, how are we going to feed such a huge crowd? The other thing is because of the bias within the scriptures of men, it actually included women and children as well, so that there was a much bigger crowd there. And that speaks about the whole need for greater inclusivity. The fact that just 5 barley loaves and 2 fish were offered is very significant, because they're actually the food of the poor. And so we need to bring that aspect in. The fact that it was offered by a little boy or a young lad who was out on his picnic for the day just speaks about the youth dimension and the importance of young people. And also, no matter how small our offering, God always blesses it enormously and provides sufficient for a great capacity of people. And so we need to look at what small offerings we can make in order to make a difference in this world. And then, the fact that people partook of the meal and were well satisfied, because they were requested to pick up what remained over. And there were 12 baskets full, and obviously that has a theological understanding to it. But it also speaks about the importance of dealing with waste. That nothing was insignificant that was left over. It had to be gathered up, and the need for us to gather up resources as they are made available to us, so that we can get on with this most important task. So, what I'd really like to learn from other faiths, and that is what parables within their faith perspective they can offer to environmental change, so that we can all grow together and actually then begin to speak with one voice as faith communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your comment. It is really important, and I think we try to cover all of the speakers, they try to cover the importance of it. Do we have any comments from my speakers? I know Nicole is waiting. Nicole, was it related to this, or would you like to also comment on covering what just Mark said? Thank you.
So I'll just answer the question quickly. So from my belief, I could contribute that, we are encouraged not to be greedy, and I think that's also very common in other religions and other traditions as well. But this leads to another point, and that is, why do we feel the need for greed? And that addresses, I think Jero is your name. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. The connection between science and religion, and actually also, politics, government, organizations. I think the common factor of all of that is, it all involves human beings. We need to look at the root cause of greed, for example. And the root cause, like I mentioned before, I believe is that there is an inner emptiness. And as long as there is an inner emptiness, we will always be drawn to consume more than we really need for our well-being, our survival, our well-being. So that's why spiritual or religious practices are so important to come into that experience of the inner richness, the inner fullness.
I'm also checking the chat, and also what we are saying at the moment is incredible. I think that intergenerational dialogue and also international, in fact, there are so many international members who joined us tonight, needs to be continued to tackle joint problems concerning environmental problems. And I hope we all can take it forward with having this event as a start of it, or continues to COP26 outcomes. I would like to continue now with Don.
Thank you. A few responses. The first thing is that in my experience with global summits, I tried, when I was responsible for accreditation, to non-governmental organizations or civic groups, when we asked for representation from faith organizations to particularly input into different committees, and we gave the responsibility to faith organizations in the past, not now. I'm just sharing my experience. There was conflict, and there was a complete tussle between faith organizations who could not agree as to who would represent them. I think this is much, much better now, the ambience and the way things are going. The second thing, which is really important, is that faith groups need to gather together, collect the information concerning what they are doing concretely in the field, such as dealing with homelessness, such as tree planting, such as dealing with waste, and so on and so forth, and present these evidence of what is concretely being done. Because faith organizations throughout the world are doing some incredible things. If you look at education, for example, or for that matter, caregiving. I don't think caregiving in the UK would be effective if faith organizations were not in the picture. But these need to be gathered together and presented as evidence and information. Then we can act with responsibility to show the fact that we are doing a really important, meaningful work concerning sustainable issues. Thank you.
My question was regarding the life cycle of packaging, because obviously now there's this awareness about the problem with plastics, but I personally am confused at the moment which packaging is actually the most environmental friendly, looking at the whole life cycle of the packaging. So that's what I wanted to ask Matt.
I'm actually putting together a document on all the various points that go into the life cycle, the science and the choice making, because at the bottom line, it's a question of responsible choice, for which we need enough information to evaluate in order to take decisions. So that is a very important thing that I'm actually working on now with a small group of people. In a few months, it will be ready and I will share it with you.
Thank you for that.
Eda, can I just respond very quickly? A quarter of a minute to say that there is detailed information about this particular matter, and if the speaker could get in touch with me, I'll be happy to point out the relevant information where she could get this information from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Do we have any other comments related to this topic? Hi, AJ.
Yeah, thank you. I want to pick up on the idea of, or one of the points that we raised in the chat was, it was COP26 successful? Was it worth it? And also, how is it different from COP25? And one of the things that I keep coming back to is, if things are too business friendly, or if, like, Rishi Sunak standing up there and all of these banks and, Mark Carney, the head of the Federal Reserve in Canada, all of the big players are there, and they're all agreeing and they're nodding their heads. I mean, I don't want to be a radical for the radical's sake, but something is not right. Something may be missing, especially if people like Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough are telling us the real discussions, and people have mentioned it here, the real discussions aren't what were going on inside COP, but were on the streets outside in Glasgow, with the people that weren't being listened to. Now, of course, you have to keep putting pressure on institutions to change. And I think, coming back to the faith and interfaith parts of this, I think both secular and humanist belief systems and also faith-based systems can provide an override to that. And that's very important. So we can provide ways in which people, because of our holy books or writings, or because of beliefs about science and about human morality and authority, we can provide override mechanisms to ensure that people who are caught up in, for example, big institutions or banks or whatever, and they are in a systematic choice where they have no choice. If they try to be green, or greener or more greener than their board of directors allows, they'd be out of a job. For those kind of people, we need to provide some other kind of a framework and a system for them to act and be initiated. And I think that's where faith, fits into the argument. So I think we'd have to be a bit cautious, I think, about taking away too many plaudits from, I think getting into institutional agreement is very important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And I think faith has that transcendent, and belief systems generally have that transcendent quality where they can transcend above economics and profit and sort of, and treaties and things like this, where we have to have a higher standard, I think, and sometimes maybe even a divine standard, however you choose to define that, or God, can be useful in these things. So I think I wanted to just make that point about the takeaway from COP26 and maybe not being too optimistic or complacent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, AJ. May I just respond to you? I was rather curious, and this is to just pull your leg a bit, to joke a little bit, because I heard you saying that humanists have belief systems as well. Yeah. That's quite interesting to hear you say that. That's just a joke from a Buddhist perspective.
Well, humans have belief systems. I mean,
yes,
I always
indeed.
joke, there's a sort of like friends of faith or interfaith. And I always joke, well, you guys are the faith and we're the friends. Yeah. But even that is not really, everyone has faith. We have faith in human beings. We have faith in systems. We have faith in the scientific method or with prayer or whatever. Humans we can't have all the knowledge in our own heads. So I think humans have belief systems.
Yeah, we don't in Buddhism really have faith as such. We have what is known as Shraddha, which is trust. But trust. I just want to point out that
semantics.
Yes, I just want to point out that in the case of business, I think the critical thing that we have demonstrated here is that the issue is not an either or. It is not business, or government.
That's fantasy anyway.
Yes,
that will never happen. So we have to have both.
Young people. It is both an end. It is a unifying process. And also with business, the important thing is now to see that businesses are also investing in green business and technology. That is a positive thing that has emerged from 2015, looking at the figures and the investment to now.
I mean, it's there. It's big companies being forced to, even at the PR level, maybe not at the investment level, but even the PR level and investment level, getting their checkbooks out. It's better than nothing. It's better than not having the attention. But we only have to evaluate that in terms of what's needed. In terms of what's needed, how much are they investing and how much are they curbing their is it net zero? Is that enough net zero carbon? What about zero carbon? What about leaving fossil fuels in the ground?
Yeah.
Which companies are saying that? That's kind of what we have to demand, because if you shoot for the stars, you land on the moon, right? If we accept the business paradigm of no green growth, no come along, then we'll get much less than that. So I think we have to have the sort of the faith standard, the divine standard in holy writings, whatever our own belief systems are. That has to be a higher standard, and we cannot be marking on a curve these businesses and giving them too much leg room, I think.
Thank you so much for your input, AJ, and everybody. I think, we are not saying anything differently, and we are trying to point out the same joint points, which is we are together in this. It's not only grassroots level problem. It's not only government problem. It's all world's problem, and we all are trying to find solutions for a better future. I would really like to have last comments, if that's okay. I'm not able to take any further questions, unfortunately. Can I start with George? Hello, Mr. George Valentine.
Hello. I was at COP26. I am Glaswegian. It's the biggest thing ever to happen in the history of my home city, although I live in Leicester for half my life. I'm a member of the Baha'i community, and the Baha'is were very closely involved in the interfaith efforts. The director of Interfaith Scotland is a long-standing member of the Baha'i community. So those principles of world unity, harmony between different beliefs, was really central to the interfaith work that was done there. In connection with secular humanists, it was mentioned a moment ago, secular humanism is regarded as equal to a faith-based belief system in UK law under the Equality Act of 2010, which recognises religion or belief as being equal in the eyes of the law and able to make equal contributions to the well-being of society. I was on the march, I was in the rally at Glasgow Green with 100,000 people, and in that atmosphere, I think what was felt was the politicians, negotiators and decision makers are irrelevant in the end. We, the people, cannot close down a coal-powered power station in Delhi. We cannot change the wording of the agreement to say phasing out of coal or fossil fuels. But it was really felt like the power resided with the people. And I think a lot of folk who were involved in that 100,000 strong march and rally were realising that for the very first time. And they were ordinary people, you know, it wasn't dyed-in-the-wool hippies or leftovers from the 1970s beatnik movement. It was regular people with their families, with small children out there. And they were seeing that they can create a future and participate in a new way of doing things that to a certain extent, and I think in future COPs, is liable to somehow or other find its way to bypassing the great and the good and the decision makers. And really, and I don't know quite how this is going to come about because I belong to the wrong side of that generational divide, make these changes that will ensure our survival and our thriving somehow outside of the conventional political system. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. And I know that you also participated in Glasgow and you did tremendous tries and also different actions during your time there. We do really appreciate your input as well. I'd like to continue with Jehangir. Jehangir, can I get it in 1 minute time if that's okay? Thank you.
Certainly. I'm speaking as a businessman. 50 years I've been working in industry, and I had to deliver what the consumer wanted. Just a simple example, very often I packed things where the packaging was more expensive than the content because people wanted that. If I tried to sell it without the packaging or inferior packaging, it didn't sold. So the change needs to take place in us. That is where the change takes place, and then business is run on demand and supply, and demand is what needs to be curbed. Thank you. My minute's over.
Thank you so much, Jehangir, and thank you for pointing out the consumer behavior that my colleague Dawod just put it in the chat as well. Finn, you waited really long to raise your main comment. Could you please go ahead and share it with us?
I want to thank everyone really for talking with so much respect. I think this is very rare. Don mentioned the blah, blah, blah quote by Greta Thunberg. And of course that may or may not have its place, but I really wanted to share my feeling that this feels very special, that we have this intergenerational, international, interfaith dialogue. It's really very incredible, and I think it's something that's very unique. And it's up to us, like Jehangir said, it's in us. It's that what needs to say first, and businesses, so maybe they respond, and then it's also just led by people. And it's talks like this that treat each other with respect, where we can learn to understand and approach each other really how to go about this change. And the shouting does, at least in this debate, has no place. And so I really hope that we can continue this discussion in the future and treat each other with so much respect. Really, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Finn. I would like to now ask from each of my speakers to share their last concluding words, starting with Aisling.
I think it's already been said, really, what I'd want to say, and it's slightly echoing what I think George was saying. But actually, there is energy, I think, in civil society and in faith groups, and kind of that was really electric, kind of in Glasgow. But I think I work with young people, I work in schools, and that is one of the big questions nowadays of what are we doing, and and how do we do it, and the eagerness to do something. So yeah, I think just carry on these conversations and all the work that sort of people here are involved in and doing, because it is getting through, and I think the change is kind of on its way and happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisling. Can I continue with Don De Silva?
Thank you. In a nutshell, I think the critical proof is the continuation of the energy that has been generated in a summit like that of Glasgow. So how do you sustain your commitment? And this is where faith comes in. Because to me, it is my faith that has enabled me through these practices to sustain the commitment during positive times, during achievements, and also during difficult and challenging times in the world of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. Sorry, I'm rushing into everyone at the moment because I'm aware of the time, and I really do appreciate that you stayed until the very end of this evening. Nicole, please, can I have your closing remarks?
Thank you, Edda.
For pointing out that we should be having a follow-up of this international, intergenerational dialogue, and this will be our aim to do so because it's been asked from our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Edda, and thank you, everyone. I think for me, it comes down to personal responsibility and really focusing on how I can bring about change in my own life, and focus less on what I expect from others, but really aim for educating myself and motivating myself to carry out small or big changes in my life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you so much all. Do you have any last comments? Please do send it to youth.coordinator. This event will have a follow-up. Please in future reach us. We are open to working together with like-minded organizations and individuals from faith groups or none who share the same values with us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. With respect and appreciation, I'm ending tonight's meeting. Thank you.
I think we should be grateful to you, Ada, for making this happen, because when things come together like this, it works for those people who suffer the most, which are the people with the least resources. So you have worked together and guided us for a juster, fairer, greener, and cleaner world. Thank you, Ada.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. See you soon, all. Have a great evening and take care of yourselves.